is about training and say guided learning experience as education, but then also realizing that students aren't expected to be experts. Still, they have to have some competence at the get-go. So tell us about that balance of the learning and expectation for student performance right away.
Well, my name is Diane Irving, and I'm with the National Academy of Public Administration. And for those of you who've never heard of us, and I'm sure that all of you, we are we're a small nonprofit that was congressionally chartered, which means the Congress said, okay, you're doing important work. And our focus is on helping government work better. So we work as consultants, we work as thought leaders in public administration. And we have over 1,000 fellows who are experts in public administration. So your governors, some of your governors, or some of your senators, or folks who have led important departments, large departments like the IRS. These are the kinds of people who are our fellows who are committed to public administration. And I'll just get a plug in. These are the kinds of people that your interns might get to meet and talk to. And as you can imagine, in an organization like this, we are focused on drawing in interns who are interested in public service. We know that they are college students, and we want their experience to be such that when they walk away, they know something about public administration. They have a better sense of where they might fit in terms of what they might want to do as a public servant. And we, again, understand that they're college students. So we draw them, we look for interns who have good research skills. We're not necessarily looking for a specific major. We're looking for folks that might have, they might have a background in anthropology. That's not usually where we get political science. Folks who are majoring in political science, or folks who are majoring in some major where they've had to do research. And we bring them on understanding that we're going to be their teachers. And I won't get into that right now. I'm sure I'll have an opportunity to talk a little bit more about that. But they are brought into an environment that is focused on helping them walk away, learning more about public service, as well as developing skills. So that's how we balance it, because we know that they're students. We want to impress them and influence their thinking in terms of kind of helping them understand what's out there for them to what opportunities there are. But we do know that they're students, and our expectations set at a level of the students, and we do spend a lot of time training them. So that's how we work at our program.
Hi everyone, my name is Kyle Matzes. I work at the International Rescue Committee. We're a global nonprofit that works with people who are displaced by conflict or disaster. So we work in over 40 countries around the world, and 29 US cities around the country. And I work at our Silver Spring, Maryland office. And what we do there is we work with immigrants who arrive in this country, either after they've been granted asylum or after they've been granted refugee status and flown here by the US government. We pick them up from an airport, we take them to an apartment that we furnish for them on their behalf. And then over the next few months and years, we work alongside our families to help them get integrated in society here. So that looks like getting their kids enrolled in school, helping their parents get enrolled in English classes and get job opportunities and things like that. So what we look for in interns, because our work is so kind of varied and more soft skills oriented, it's really just a passion to serve. If anyone is really passionate about serving their community and has some kind of interest or even personal background with immigration or experiences of migration, that passion is really far above the thing that we're looking for. Language experience is great, but everything that you do at our company, you'll learn on the job.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Hicks and I am the program administrator at the Platform Hope. The Platform Hope is a small community nonprofit located in the Adams Morgan area. And we serve low-income families of color in that area, Adams Morgan, Columbia Heights, and Mount Pleasant mostly. And what we do is families will come to us and say, I really need help with X, Y, Z. That could be housing, that could be education, working on debt, or, some family struggles, wellness. And what we do is we take families in and we do one-on-one coaching with them. Everyone is assigned a program manager. And the program manager is like, okay, great, like, let's connect you with this resource. Let's connect you with this resource. Like, let's work on updating the resume. We also host workshops on various topics such as parenting class. We've done mental illness. We've done women's health, financial wellness, home buying, you name it, we've probably done it. And then finally, our other really big main goal is getting families connected. This was a pilot program that was started by like Jubilee Housing, Mary Center, Sitar Arts Center, Bria, and a couple more. And they saw that families were trying to work on all these problems, but everything was interconnected. So, families trying to find housing is tied to employment, employment is tied to education. And like, if you're stressed out about that, how's your health? How's that affecting your kids? So all of that connected together. And so that's how the Platform Hope was birthed. We also try and connect families because a lot of families like that live in the area, they may not know each other, like their kids all go to the same school, but they have like no idea because they've never really connected. So that is a little bit of our program. And for interns, what we really look for is we look for interns that are interested in getting connected with the community. Interns that are interested in serving the community. And so we look for interns that really have like a lot of passion. We are also an anti-racist organization. So any intern that's interested in working kind of in that field is what we look for. And then within our program, what I always like to do as a supervisor is like one of our first meetings, I'm like, tell me what some of your strengths are. What are you really interested in? And students will say, I really like social media. I really want to like work directly with families. And then I'm like, okay, so what are some areas that you want to improve on in your internship? And then they're like, communication. I want to work maybe on my Spanish skills. We work with a lot of Spanish speaking folks. And so from there, we kind of craft the internship and get started.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eric Story. I'm from the American Bar Association. We really try to understand that students are trying to build their resume as they're coming to us. So they may not have a whole lot on paper, but whenever they come to us, we just try to make sure that they're genuine, they're ready to work, they're self-motivated. And if we have those core talents, then we can help them build their resume. So you named it. We have a lot of meetings with our students throughout the entire program, where we continually ask them, what do you want to build? What are you interested in? Is it something that's digital? Is it something that's direct lobbying? And we make sure and try to form the internship program around them. We do try to help them a little bit with deliverables that they can use on their resumes. So I might point that out, that we try to get them published. We try to have them involved in different projects, try to get them up on panels like this so they can kind of get used to these things, all of which can be put on LinkedIn profiles, right? And helps build out their assets that way. So whether they come to us with a resume, probably not. We hope to build that as we go.
Hey everyone, I'm Ashley Raven. I am the Director of Operations at Global Business Alliance. We are a advocacy organization, so basically kind of a lobbying firm, but we are a business association. We're not trade specific. Our member companies, so we're a member organization. Our member companies are all very large organizations, corporations, and we are representing the US subsidiaries of foreign-owned companies. So our member companies have large American, US operations, so we Sony, Toyota, L'Oreal, Anheuser-Busch. So we run the gamut of all different trades and industries. And our interns also, they aren't all doing in the same department. So we have 4 or 5 every semester, and they're all in a different area. So we do events, we have one that's in membership, we'll do data analytics, we have communications and media. So we look for different things in each of those. Generally, a lot of our applicants don't really know what it is that we do, because we're in the tax and trade policy space for a lot of our advocacy. So we look for students that have an interest in political science or advocacy, and even some that we might get that have no interest in doing events, like putting on events or being an event manager. Knowing, like giving them the information, knowing that if they are working in events, they're not just working in events, they're meeting folks that are the tax executives to certain corporations, or they're going to be working with folks that are CFOs, so they're going to be getting a high level experience of what it's like to be in the professional world. And so we really like to get ones that are interested in that space, but then be able to hone in on their professionalism.
I know we have a good intro on all the internships. I want to talk about a couple of our logistical pieces. When students start in Washington semester, in the first 2 weeks of the program, they land. They need to submit what we call fondly the ELF, the Experiential Learning Form, or our acronym of our friendly ELF, that we trot out for orientation and flip around and occasionally reward with cookies, the Keebler kind. And as we work with students to build goals and their blueprint of what they're learning in this experiential learning form, students set a minimum of at least 3 goals, and they work with their supervisors and their faculty and reflect themselves on what they want to do for the term. So on the AU side, we have a technical vehicle. But at the same time, we know that in the reality of the day-to-day, there's also what happens face-to-face and online. So we'd love to hear in your practical experience how you're working with students to set expectations and how you're working with students from the start to shape a positive experience. Start again with you.
Okay. First, during our interview process, and all of our students typically will, all students that apply for internships with us do have resumes. We will ask them what they're looking for in an internship. So that's important for us to know from the beginning, because we have several options for them. We have options, an option for interns to work on study, whether that's research based, or where they're working with our fellows directly through our engagement group or communications, or with our business development. So we want to have a sense. We want to tell the interns what the options are, but we also want to have a sense of what they're looking for. And we want to place them in the right internship. Sometimes they're interested in a couple of things, and we'll create a hybrid experience for them so that they can work with 2 different groups. But then, so we next then move to the onboarding piece, and that is where they will meet with our team. That is, it's an intern programming team, and that's a group of about 5 staff members who will onboard the intern and work with interns as their coaches, and they will actually do a survey with interns again to ask them what they're interested in. They meet with interns weekly to just see how they're progressing against their goals. They'll work. They'll reach out to the direct supervisors to make sure that they're what their goals are for the intern, but they are partners with the interns throughout their internship. And again, the goal is to make sure that they learn the things that they're interested in learning. But we also offer training to the interns. We offer them, we do training for developing their resumes. We do training for for career training, so if they're interested in, going into graduate school, we'll bring in, internal folks to talk with them about that process. But, again, we really try to make it a learning experience, both in terms of developing skills. We'll help them build a resume, we'll help them, learn about networking. But they do know from the very beginning that they have these group of people who are not necessarily their direct supervisors, who are there to support them and offer them information and guidance at any time.
So all of our interns on their first day, they attend a group orientation all together. And one of the big points that we make during that session is that we understand that they are here to work and to learn. The work piece will be fully taken care of. The learning piece, we really encourage them to be the own architects of what they want to get out of the experience. And so we have a framework that confidently called a professional development plan, where we introduce to them at orientation and encourage them over the first few weeks to brainstorm independently as they're beginning to learn what their goals are, what they want to get out of the experience, and then they will have scheduled check-ins with their direct supervisor, who's also responsible for training them and administering their tasks. So 3 check-ins throughout their internship to assess their progress. And the reason that we structure it that way, and that it's the same person who is providing them tasks as it is helping with their professional development, is because then we can really tailor their experience to what they're looking for. If someone is really interested in public speaking and bolstering those skills, then we'll put them in more group training opportunities as opposed to individual case management, as an example.
Yeah, so the first day of our internship is usually the onboarding. The platform hub is very small. There's only 6 staff members, like in total, the entire organization. So I usually am the one that does the onboarding with them, going over kind of some basic procedures, like here's your email, here's how we do communications. And then, as mentioned, I'm like, so what are you really interested in? Do you want to work with families? Are you more interested in administration? Are you interested to see what about working at a nonprofit really interests you? And sometimes they're like, I'm really interested in learning more about what the ED does. And I'm like, great, Judy, our ED, I'll be like, hey, Judy, our intern really wants to work with you. And then they can directly work with our ED on what other projects. If they want to work with a family, I'll just say to Pam, one of our program managers, hey, do you have any tasks that our interns can work with the family? And so from there, we kind of set the expectation that their internship is theirs to develop whatever they're interested in the nonprofit sector. They can do here, whatever areas of exploration they would like to do. We also offer to our interns, if they are interested in learning about different nonprofits that we partner with, such as Jubilee Housing or Satori Mary Center, we do sometimes make those connections and hey, join us on this meeting with Mary Center. And that's a really exciting thing that we do.
So again, we're kind of, I think we run a similar program here, yeah. So with the American Bar Association, we have a lot of different wings in a lot of different areas. So we immediately sit with our intern group, that whatever however many we get that term. And we individually try to map out what the next couple of weeks would look like. We try to get them to place themselves in these different issues, and we'll run through scenarios for different sectors. And we try to narrow down exactly what they want to do for the entire semester. We found that if we just sort of ask them, hey, tell us about yourself. What do you like to do? We'll get 1 or 2 word responses. People don't know what they don't know yet. So we try to continually work with them. If they're interested in immigration, for instance, and the digital side of it, we'll introduce them to the digital team and the immigration team. And circle back with them. We'll allow them to do a couple projects with that team. Say, okay, now we'll move on to another one. And after they do about 3 or 4 different areas of law, and you know, whether they're working with finances, grassroots, digital side, we just kind of, as we go, it's a pick your own journey kind of thing. So we have found that sometimes the interns think they want to go in one direction, but they end up going in something completely different. And we kind of feel like those are the victories.
We're a pretty small organization as well, so we have 16 full-time staff. And our interns are hired into a specific position, so they will apply, we do 4 or 5 per semester. And they will apply for a specific position. Some will apply for all of them, and then we know that they're looking for general, like an internship in maybe just the association or trade advocacy space. But so when they come on, they know that they are in a specific position, and each of those positions has a supervisor with them. So we have, you know, our events person is working with our senior coordinator of events, our media and communication is working with our senior associate of media communication. And so they are actually working with them daily. For the ones that are with our associates, they're seated near them when they're in the office. And one, our government affairs one works directly with the senior director of state government affairs. So they're checking in every morning, they're working together daily on their projects. We have kind of like whole office a check-in system on through Teams through the app, where they can let us know what they've been working on that week, anything that they need help with, or what they are looking forward to working on the next week. And so that they're working with their direct supervisor, but also that's sent to a couple of us that can look in on it. So I can see if they need help in a specific area, I can see that and I can plan with them and check in with them on that. So coming in, there's a very set, they know what they're going to be working on, while at the same time, their direct supervisor is getting information from them, like, what do you actually want to do? If somebody's in events, we have a person in events right now who is not an events person, they're really a policy or political science person, but they know that working in events, they're going to get experience with the people in their, you know, our government affairs, heads of government affairs or tax or whatever, so they're going to get experience with that. And we just find out what they want to learn and work with them through it.
I want to commend everyone on this panel for the way that you're giving such freedom of choice for students and creativity, that you're talking to students to tailor and individualize. I'm not sure if it was intentional on Karen and Meg's part to find the supremely talented supervisors who are going next level to give this creative leadership opportunity for students, but we appreciate that. All of our internships do require hard work, and this kind of personalization is often, of course, when we're coaching students to land a good fit to pick this type of placements. So we want to talk about feedback. In the Washington semester program, we've designed an ongoing survey of assessment. You heard earlier from Jeff. He mentioned that we do a midterm check-in that's both for student self-assessment as well as employer assessment of students. We also have the end of semester check-in as well on both sides. In fact, we published a journal article in NACE, the National Association of Colleges and Employers in 2021 on this topic. And our research proved very significantly that every student, that the students learned in our program, essentially the data all lined up to show growth. And we're so pleased that the numbers back it up. But most importantly, when we talk to the supervisors and the students, we see it. To supplement the data that we have, we know that supervisors have ongoing conversations with students. We'd love to hear the way that you supplement these qualitative and a little bit qualitative evaluations, the way that you exchange feedback with students, the way that you're setting expectations, and then also delivering that performance feedback back to students. And again, we'll begin again with Diane.
Our students probably get daily feedback. And I don't mean that negatively, but they are working directly with a junior level person who is essentially their coach. And so they have somebody, in most cases, they would be a project director, or a director of a department that they are reporting to, but they are working with a junior level person who is 1 or 2 years out of university. And they are giving them guidance on the day-to-day tasks as well as feedback. So in addition to this separate coaching team that I mentioned, that is kind of looking globally to make sure that they have guidance on kind of individual things like to understand, helping them understand, what are you doing? How do those things translate to new skills? How do you put that information on a resume? So we're working kind of a team front, really 3 fronts. Their kind of individual coach, their team, the team that is coaching them, and the feedback that they are getting directly from their directors.
So as part of the professional development plan I mentioned, we include some resources about how interns can have professional development conversations, how they can ask for feedback. And we also provide resources for supervisors to how to provide constructive feedback, both through the 3 structured check-ins we have during the internship and in an ongoing manner. So we provide those resources, and we also train both interns and our staff every term about the importance of doing so, so that the interns can get better and can improve and continue to learn, but also the importance of that process of getting and receiving feedback as a professional skill in and of itself. So we provide regular training opportunities, so both parties can continue to learn.
Yeah, so our interns do get daily feedback, whatever project they have, they'll give to us, and then we'll say, this is great, maybe think about this for the future, whether creating a flyer, researching the resources and whatnot. But we also, I tend to have kind of like one-on-one meetings with the intern, just kind of like check in to see how things are going, not just on like kind of like on specific projects, but also just like overall workload. Like, how are you feeling with your workload? Are you overwhelmed? Do you feel like you can take on more? Do you want to work on something else? And I find that those check-ins really help our interns feel comfortable to come to us and say, hey, I'm feeling really overwhelmed with XYZ. I'd really like some help on this. And also part of our internship, that while it's like, yeah, such a working experience and it's a learning experience, part of like the learning of working is learning about boundaries, work-life boundaries. And that's something that's like really important in our teams. So we make sure like when you're off, you're off. I don't want you messaging me back. And that's also something like I check in with interns as well. Like, how are things going at school? Are you feeling okay? What, just kind of doing some more personal check-ins, because that makes the intern feel really comfortable to like come to you with anything that they need. And that's kind of like how we operate as a team. That's how we operate to our families. And that's kind of the courtesy that we do extend to our interns. So that's kind of how our feedback works.
Lawyers have never been shy about sharing their opinions, so I almost worry that they get too much feedback. But we have a few different systems in place. We use a couple computer programs, one of them Trello, another one Asana, which allows us to sort of keep an eye on everything the interns do while giving feedback, giving notes. Of course, like I said, we try to work with them throughout the programs. Say an intern does a project with the business law section for a week. Once they finish that project and we kind of have that sit down with the business law section, their direct supervisors, all that stuff, we sort of have a mini feedback session there. I almost don't call it a feedback session so much as just bringing that intern into the team to let them know how the team is working on those things. So we don't necessarily critique them necessarily on what they're doing. We just try to show them good things that our team is doing. If they like that, if they respond to it, we give them more. If they glaze over, if they don't take that well, we can understand that, well, there's something that we need to continue working on there. We do have those regular check-ins, we do have those programs. And then, of course, we try to take them to coffee and lunch as much as possible and just ask them, how are things going? So.
Like I said, our interns are working with their supervisors daily, so they're getting a lot of their updates and feedbacks daily. And our supervisor really try and strike that balance of knowing that they're not looking for perfectionism from them, so they're not expecting everything to come in as perfect. But to know when, if they get a document or whatever it might be easy for them to fix it themselves, but they're gonna give that feedback of like, this is what we would like to see differently, rather than taking the easy route of just fixing it, making it perfect how we want it, giving them that feedback so they know what to look for in that professional environment, what might be expected of them a little bit differently. And then, like I said, we're using the team's update now for them to give us weekly updates on what they've done. We also have a project tracker that they might set up at the beginning of their internship with a lot of like, larger projects, due dates and stuff. And we really let them know that this is not to track what they're doing, to make sure we know that they're working when they're working. So we are in a remote hybrid environment, but to let them know that they're putting all these projects, tracking this, getting feedback and what they've done, what they might do differently, pros and cons. So they have a report of like their accomplishments and what they've done throughout their internship. So they have that to take with them and say, this is what I've accomplished, or this is what I need to work on. So it's more of the feedback that we do is for them, but also for us about what they need more or less from us.
Good. This kind of feedback translates into this improved confidence that we see in the evaluation feedback. One of the biggest bits of feedback that we get is it's almost this visual that you can also see in students when they have a better sense of confidence, where they're able to master these professional competencies where they might feel a little bit awkward at first coming into the office into a new professional setting. But this is the kind of feedback that helps position students for their whole career ahead. And we're grateful for the different perspectives that you shared there. At American, it's pretty popular that we do a flipped classroom where the students become the teachers. And so if you're going to look at the internship side as a flipped classroom, we're curious to know what the interns are teaching you. So what are you learning? Feel free to share any stories or any just general feedback that you have and the way that the students are making an impact on your offices.
What we learn every semester is that you've got a great bunch of folks who are going to fix everything. I mean, working with interns seriously kind of reminds us that we have a lot of great young people who are really passionate and interested in making this world better. And it sounds corny, but that's who we're looking for. That's what we find. And so we're happy about that. But we also, we learn from them in terms of kind of how we can be better at the job that we're doing. Because I mentioned earlier, it is our goal. You know, we're a government contractor for is a great way to explain that. And our organization is filled with people who have committed their careers have been in working for government at all levels. These are people who are committed to making government work better. And so we want those interns to walk away understanding what their opportunities are, and hopefully they'll make the decision that they want to serve in some capacity that helps our government move forward. But they'll also learn that there are other ways to do that, right? The organization that we have without working directly or in government, but so we're looking to find out how we can influence a generation of people who are not necessarily looking to work with the government as their career. And so we learn more about how we can be influential, and you know, how the government may be influential in attracting and retaining bright young people who are committed to service. So that's what we learn from our interns every semester. We learn a little bit more about how to attract this generation to public service.
So our organization works with people who have been through incredibly traumatic circumstances that have caused them to flee their homes, and that's why we're working with them. And our interns, we really give them the responsibility because of the scale of our work to help people directly. They're not sheltered behind a staff member, they have direct communication with all of our families. And because of that, they, like all of our staff, are put in challenging conversations. And what we learned from lots of interns is that they really wanted more training, more preparation for how to have those kinds of conversations. So that perspective we gathered from feedback from interns. I do exit interviews with all of them, and that was one of the biggest things that we were hearing a lot. So we added that as part of our standard training to provide trauma-informed care as a critical component of the way that we communicate with clients, the way that we expect interns to do so. So to give them the tools to do that effectively. And I tell that story, that kind of process of learning that that's what interns needed and incorporating that. I tell that story at every intern orientation to tell them that we are listening to them, because that feedback is not always comfortable to give, especially as a new person who's only going to be there for a few months. And the reason I share it is because we will listen, and because we will grow as an organization if they can take initiative and can tell us how we can grow and change. So to give them that space, I tell them that the best thing they can do to really make an impact, to make themselves know if they want to work with us down the road, is to think critically about the work that we do, to come with us for new ideas, because we actually will put them in practice.
Yeah, so one of the ways, or something that we've learned as an organization from our interns, very practical, is our onboarding process. So onboarding for our interns has changed a lot from our first year to our 5th year in the program, and we've had interns say, this makes no sense. And I look at them like, you're right, this makes no sense. I don't know why we're doing that. And so that is something that we've definitely taken from interns, like, how can we make our organization so that if all of our staff disappeared one day and someone picked up our work, that people would be able to understand like what we're doing. And I think another thing that we've really learned from our interns is to give ourselves some grace. I think in the nonprofit world, especially, like, we are a staff of 6, 7, and we currently work with 68 families. And so we're really constantly go. And I think from having an intern, we have learned as an organization to like pause, take appreciation for like the work that we're doing, you know, do some celebrations. That's something our intern was like, you guys should like celebrate your successes. And we're like, what are you talking about? Yeah, we have all these things we need to fix. And they're like, no, we should really like take a time to be positive. And I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. Absolutely. Okay, yeah, let's do that. So that's something our interns have really taught us. And I think having an intern in our program, I think we usually have like 1, sometimes 2. But, you know, having a new set of eyes on our organization, because we are so young, and the aspect of being a nonprofit is really nice. And, you know, opening up different avenues on like how we connect with families, maybe like social media stuff, like we just got an Instagram a couple weeks ago. And our interns were like, please get an Instagram. We're like, I know, we're working on it. So yeah, I love having interns and love supervising them and hope to have more in the future.
God, what have we not learned? I learned that interns don't know who the soup Nazi is. Didn't know Pam was married to Martin. I will say our interns are a different generation than we are. They are much more connected. They are incredibly intelligent and they are incredibly observant. They take in information much quicker than we do. And they utilize it. Our generation, I think, and I'm a millennial. I think our generation did a good job of being the information generation, where we could take things in and understand things. This generation knows how to manipulate things and actually use that frontal lobe to make change. So we very much try to position our interns in our membership engagement areas. Anytime we have any type of lead gen recruitment campaigns, anytime we try to talk to a large swath of members of Congress or try to talk to staffers, they have that community understanding that I think is extremely valuable. So we've learned to, and this is difficult for lawyers because they don't like to admit that anything they do is wrong. But I think we've learned that whenever we have our background sessions, we need to hear from the interns what it's like to experience these things from somebody in their perspective, because they're our next membership round and we need to make sure and cater to them. So extremely helpful.
A lot of it, so I asked our supervisors all to give me a little bit of feedback on some of this before coming here today. And a lot of them gave me the feedback that they're learning better listening and communication skills. So better at their active listening and their communication. So I think it's really helping supervisors of the interns are also learning how to then manage their job and their communication with their supervisors and managers, because now they're getting that experience of what it's like to maybe not know what somebody is doing, or they don't have that communication. They realize, oh, okay, wait, I need to be letting my supervisor know what I'm doing. So they're kind of really getting a better rounded feel for that kind of managing up, since they're now responsible for the job that somebody's doing.
Thank you all for those great stories. I do have a few more questions, but I still though want to pause right here to see if you all have questions. I want to make sure that we are using your time wisely to address any of the questions that are front of mind for you right now. So feel free to raise your hand and ask any questions for the panel or for any individuals here. We're happy to entertain those.
I just want to make some research that I've done with another Washington semester professor. The name of the article was Forgotten Educator, Experiential Learning Internship Supervisors, and it's based on a lot of data, but basically it's what you're seeing right here is that the internship supervisors, and the reason why we wanted to do the research was these guys are giving grades to our students. The professors are the ones that put it in the computer and the assignments for the internship class, but they're giving they're giving grades to our students for academic credit. Can they be considered real educators? And with the focus groups and surveys, and as you can tell from the last half hour, that these are people who are passionate about teaching their students. And value added with Washington semester is that with people like Amy and Meg and so forth and staff, finding those people in Washington DC who really care about bringing these young people in, getting the energy that they bring to their organizations, and there's lots they get, but that they see themselves as educators and giving them back to you, to us, the professors, the educators, and they're that much equipped as far as their skills and their liberal arts education and so forth. So, thank you. And all of the people who really do a great job at teaching our students.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Meg?
So I just wanted to share with everybody a very specific reason we chose these candidates, and they all come from some of our top employers for internships, and just kind of wanted to brag a little bit about their numbers over the years. The American Bar Association has had over 28, close to 30 of our interns from Washington semester program over the past 10 years, and this is just data in our internship base, which means it probably goes way further back than that. That's just what we currently have. The Global Business Alliance has 3 interns just this semester, which is insane, because I think a lot of times, people think 1 intern is a lot, 3 is definitely a lot, so that means they have a really robust, great program. The Platform of Hope has hosted 8 different interns in the past 3 years for us. The National Academy of Public Administration has had 48 interns of ours in the past 7 years. Again, huge numbers that we're seeing across fall, summer, and spring. And then the International Rescue Committee has had 10 interns, and of those 10, 4 of them have come from this past year. So just really, really great programs and strong partners for the Washington semester program. So I guess my question for you all, in your experience in working with Washington semester program students, what sets our program apart? When you see a student come in as an applicant from WSP, what makes you say, yeah, we need to interview them?
I'll go on that one. So we do have 3 right now. This is the first time that I have, I did the virtual internship fair. Thank you. And so that was the first time I did it. I was like, yeah, I'll sign around and do it, because we're kind of like late and looking for our interns. And I was surprised at just how everybody came very well prepared, had information, they gave you a little background on them. I got to do a lot of really good one-on-ones and speak to everybody. And most of the ones I spoke to were actually surprised to hear like, oh, we didn't know what you do, or how well like our company would be a good fit for what they were looking for. So it was great to have that one-on-one. And all of the ones that I met with that applied, I said, hey, follow up with me. They did follow up with me. They sent me their information. And I was able to get that information to the direct supervisor who's going to do the interview and say, hey, I met with them. I think they would be great for this. So it was I was very impressed with the way that they came in, prepared and just very excited. So I found everybody in the program excited to come here specifically and not just get an internship because it was expected of them.
So I've actually run a few different intern programs for a few different organizations. I ran it for Edelman, which is a large PR firm. And that was a churn and burn environment. They were extremely well prepared, just like what you have put together. But they didn't have the care that y'all have as you go through the semester. At the Heart Association, they did a very good job of just that, kind of working with people throughout. But then they didn't have everything organized straight from. The best thing I can say is this program has the best of all the worlds put together. There's a lot of different things that you can try to measure. This one I have found has the highest on every single category.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I feel like this program is really well organized, and the students that we've gotten are really, really amazing students. They're passionate, they're organized, and they're willing to learn. And as we always say, I'm like, if you're willing to learn, we're good to go. So that I think this program is absolutely exceptional.
So we have a pretty big intern cohort. Each term we have about 30 interns in the spring, summer, and fall. And especially during the academic terms, the spring and fall semesters, we get a lot of our interns from the local area universities, but those students are taking a full-time course load and trying to intern on top of it. And the Washington semester program allows students most who are from out of state to really get a deeper experience at their internship sites. And that is just so valuable for us as an organization. So really invest in, it gives us the time to really invest in them, to have them learn so much and to really take on a lot of responsibilities, even in such short a time. So that builds a lot of faith in our supervisors who do the direct recruitment. They're going to recruit people that they will supervise, and when they see Washington semester program candidates, they're like, okay, this person is coming to DC for this. And so that extra level of really intention really helps those candidates stand out.
I would echo everything everyone has said and just maybe to amplify a couple of comments. One, well prepared. I would call out the program as being very, very supportive of the students. So it feels like more of a partnership in the sense that we're trying to take care of making sure that they learn and have a good experience, that we get them engaged in our culture, and that they're having this very positive experience, but they also have the AU program to Washington semester program that supports them in the same ways. And honestly, we like the fact that the program is helping the students learn about Washington and do different things. So it's a completely well-rounded experience, exactly what you want a student to have coming to Washington. So it really feels like a very complimentary program to our internship. So I would just add that make a reason for making it a standout program.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. Your terrific remarks and questions have perfectly aligned with our transition to the next step. I'm gonna pass it over to Carol, who will hand it on to the faculty. Thank you all so much for taking time out of your day. Every day you show it with supervising interns, and today you showed it to our other population, the conduit to get the students here, our partner representatives. Thank you all so much for your time, and look out for a treat from Meg if you haven't found her yet. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We do have coffee right outside the door along with some dessert. So if you'd like to take 2 minutes to grab something and come back in, then we will meet our next round of faculty. Nice to meet you.
It's fine working.
Question, so do you ever work with families or
Yeah. No, so we do work with him. Because they do adjust that. If they have something to do. We're starting. Yeah.
Any other schools that are
There we go. I'm Mark Sherman. I teach the criminal legal system course. And this semester I am celebrating my 30th year with involvement in Washington semester. It's hard to believe. So in the fall of 1993, I taught my first Washington semester course, and that was what we called at the time public law and American politics. It's been quite a road since then. So of those 30 years, 6 of them were full-time. So from 93 to 99, I was full-time here. And at that time, the appointments were through our colleges on the main campus, our teaching units on the main campus. So my appointment was through the School of Public Affairs, but I was detailed, as we all were, to Washington semester full-time. So that was 6 years, and then in the past, basically 23, 24 years as an adjunct, teaching mostly in Washington semester, what used to be, well, what is still the internship component, but also what used to be the research project component, the occasional seminar. Difficult to teach the seminar as an adjunct. Basically have done it all. A total of 35 years of teaching. Before I came to Washington semester at AU in 93, I taught for a couple of years at Catholic University Law School, and then at Georgetown University Law School, where I was a clinical teaching fellow. And then I came here in 93, and I had a dual appointment at the law school, so I was an adjunct at AU Law School for several years as well. So a lot of different kinds of teaching experience. I've taught interns, I've hired interns, I've supervised interns, taught research, conducted and published research. So it's been really quite a road the last 35 years or so. And I had my own Washington semester experience, but it wasn't part of Washington semester. As an undergrad, I went to George Washington in the Stone Age. It was quite an experience for me. I had originally gone to community college. I'm from Northern Palm Beach County, Florida. Went to community college because I was a terrible high school student and needed to learn how to be a student. Transferred to GW in the early 80s, and when I got to, and I was a political science and econ major at GW, and it just rocked my world. And really, that was my Washington semester experience, because obviously I had the political science and econ education at GW in Foggy Bottom, but then I was also an intern on Capitol Hill. I then got an internship in the executive office of the president, and then at the U.S. Trade Representative's office. And that was in 2 years as an undergraduate at GW. Then I left DC to go to law school. And then a week after I graduated from law school, I was back here. Sound familiar? I mean, this is the Washington semester story for a lot of people. And that's my story. And that's why I'm so passionate about teaching a Washington semester, because it reflects my own experience, and it's a transformative experience for people, and an empowering experience for the students. So I'm happy to talk to you about any of that, but I do want to sort of give you a sense of the criminal legal system course. So the technical, or the full title of the course is Criminal Legal System: Roots of Mass Incarceration and Racial Disparity. So that's the lens. And I should probably also say, before I get to the course, that my full-time job, so I'm here as an adjunct, my full-time job is at a place called the Federal Judicial Center. The Federal Judicial Center is the research and education agency of the United States courts, the federal judiciary. Our office is in the Thurgood Marshall building next to Union Station. And so every federal judge who is nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate comes to my agency to learn how to be a judge. So we provide all of the training for all federal judges. There are 2,000 of them. So that's all Article 3 judges, meaning U.S. Courts of Appeals judges, United States District judges, federal magistrate judges, Article 1 judges, meaning federal bankruptcy judges, and then, so there are about 2,000 total of them, and then 30,000 court staff. All of them get their continuing professional education from my agency. at that agency, I'm the Assistant Division Director for Probation and Pretrial Services Education, which means I supervise a team of criminal justice educators who work with primarily district judges, magistrate judges, and probation and pretrial services officers to help them with continuing professional education in criminal justice and criminal law. So that's what I do, and I've been there for about 20, actually in my 25th year there. So as you might imagine, that all of that experience influences my perspective on how I approach this criminal legal system course. And so the overall goal of the course is to really provide the students with fundamentals of the criminal legal system, what it looks like, what its components are, who the decision makers are, how that can lead to, how those decisions can either aggravate or mitigate mass incarceration and racial disparity. That's a big part of it. And to sort of the subtext, maybe it's not the subtext, maybe it's the text, is, you know, how law is used as an instrument of oppression and of liberation, right? So, and quite frankly, the experience that I'm sharing with the students and the people I'm bringing in to talk with the students are the same things that I do with the judges that we teach, with the probation officers that we teach, with the pretrial services officers that we teach. It's the same thing. It's just modulated for a different audience. So in terms of what the course consists of, we start out with constitutional foundations of the criminal legal system. And then we move through a historical lens. So for example, one of the first things we do in terms of site visit is go to the National Museum of African American History and Culture, where if you go through the history galleries, you will learn how the law has been used to oppress people, right? That's the first thing you learn when you walk through the history galleries. And then as you make it up toward the civil rights movement, you learn how the law has been used to liberate, right? That's almost the very first thing that we do, and it's the first thing the students learn in the course, right? And that sets the foundation for the remainder of the course. Then we get into, I should also say, we use a conceptual framework. We have text, but we use a conceptual framework, again, that I use in my other professional work with the courts, and that is something called the sequential intercept model, which is a model created by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration at HHS, which shows the different parts of the criminal legal system and in each part, where there can be an intercept, where there's an opportunity to divert people from the criminal legal system, right? So it's a very nice, it's a little bit too linear, but it's a very nice, simple model for the students to use, and we're constantly coming back to it over the course of the semester, and bringing them back to, and so our course basically tracks that sequential intercept model. So Google the sequential intercept model, it's kind of interesting, and that's the conceptual framework that we use. We move after the constitutional foundations and the history into policing and law enforcement. So for example, I'll have the research director from the Police Executive Research Forum come speak to the students about the big picture in policing and law enforcement. And then I'll have a former Metropolitan Police Department officer, very experienced guy, he's retired now, and he's still very involved in criminal justice here in the District of Columbia, come and talk to them about what it means to be a police officer, what some of the issues are that the police are dealing with, what the role of police unions are, right? How police unions get in the way of reform, right? Those kinds of things. So we cover policing and law enforcement. The next thing we do is cover what we call pretrial justice, jails, and alternatives to incarceration, right? So for example, last week, a week and a half ago, we were down at the US District Court for the District of Columbia, observing a detention hearing. And the detention hearing is where there's an initial appearance and or a detention hearing. After a defendant is arrested, after a person is arrested, they become a defendant, right? The first thing they do is have an initial appearance or a detention hearing to determine whether they are a danger to the community or a risk of flight, right? I wanted the students to see that. right? Because that decision is the single most important decision that will occur in the criminal legal system after arrest. Obviously, arrest is another important decision, but that in-out decision, will you be detained pending trial, right? Or will you be released? And if you will be released, on what conditions, right? And how will that work? Is the single most important decision. I wanted the students to be able to see that. So we went and we observed a detention hearing and then spoke to the magistrate judge for a couple of hours and his law clerks before and after that proceeding. So they could flesh out the proceeding, right? And disentangle what they saw. They talked to the assistant federal defender. They talked to the assistant U.S. attorney, the prosecutor, the law clerks. So it was kind of a cool session because not only did they observe the proceeding and sort of have a chance to talk to the judge about the proceeding, they also talked to the judge and the law clerks about going to law school, right? And what that's like, and what does a law clerk do for a federal judge, right? Or for any judge, and why is that important to know if you're thinking about going to law school? So it's a really interesting and fun experience for them. The next part of the course, which we're actually just starting now, is plea bargaining, sentencing, and incarceration. And so this week, we had Jenny Gathright, who covers, she's the crime reporter for our WAMU 88.5 NPR affiliate. And what's great about Jenny is she's, as opposed to many of our other speakers, she's fairly young. She graduated from Harvard in 2016, got a job with NPR in 2020, and has been a crime reporter since 2020, and she's phenomenal. If you have not seen or listened to her reporting, she works for DCIS, which is the sort of publication or website equivalent or counterpart to WAMU. She came in and talked about crime reporting and what she's observing in the District of Columbia, because that's what we try to do with this course. Is we're covering the federal courts and we're covering sort of these larger criminal legal system issues, but we're using the District of Columbia. So there's Washington and there's DC, okay? So we do the Washington part, federal district court, whatever, but we also do the DC part, right? Which is, talking to members of the Metropolitan Police Department, local crime reporting. What do we see? Because what is DC? DC may be the nation's capital and a world capital, but it's also a mid-sized American city that has all the same problems that every other mid-sized American city has in terms of crime. Okay, so that's what we're covering now. And what the bonus of Jenny coming in was that she also brought in Pete Petty. Pete was released from prison in 2020 after spending 30 years in prison for murder, which he committed when he was 16 years old, right? So from 16 years old to 46 years old, Pete was in federal prison. He was released in 2020, and what's he doing now? He's a violence interrupter and a credible messenger in the District of Columbia, doing extraordinary work to try to prevent try to interrupt the cycle of violence that a lot of people, especially people in the African-American community, experience here in DC. And Pete is born and raised in DC. So that's what we did this week. And then finally, we'll complete the course over the next few weeks with a few classes, 2 or 3 classes on reentry to the community and what that looks like for people coming out of prison. And so we've already had, we sort of gave the students a sneak peek because a couple of weeks ago, a colleague of mine who's a U.S. District Judge from Oregon, Ann Aiken, happened to be in town with one of the people who was also a re-entering citizen, a woman, a white woman who spent 5 years in the Bureau of Prisons, came out several years ago, and is also doing extraordinary work on re-entry. And Judge Aiken has a reentry court, so an alternative supervision court in Oregon, and Christy Lashover was one of the defendants who went through her court. So they came together and presented to the students here in class, in person, even though they're from Oregon. So it was a really wonderful opportunity to have them here. It was an extraordinary class. The students ate it up. It was really a beautiful thing. So we'll finish off the last part of the course on reentry. We'll go downtown to the Georgetown Prisons and Justice Initiative, where the students will meet with other people who are currently in programming and re-entering the community from prison. So really, it's about understanding the system and how it really works, how decisions at each level can either aggravate or mitigate mass incarceration and racial disparity. Helping students better understand their career goals. They think they want to go to law school, but do they? Right? And opening their minds to new ideas. We put practitioners in front of them, we put different perspectives in front of them, all the same things that my colleagues do in their seminars. And the emphasis, as you're hearing, is people with lived experience, people who've been incarcerated, right? People who've had to re-enter the community. What is that like, right? And different kinds of people. And then the national, federal, and bringing it down to the local. So there's a lot of darkness, right, in the criminal legal system, but there's also a fair amount of light. There's a lot of opportunity, especially for young people who are interested in transforming the system. And so that's what we try to do. So that's really all I have to say. I'm happy to respond to any questions or reactions. Thank you. Yeah.
So even your background and career path, we often have to, as advisor of the political science major, we often have to advise the student who says they want to go to law school quite blindly. What do you have any advice on how to advise those students?
Yeah, sure. How much time do you have? So I wrote a little book. They can buy it. It's on lulu.com. And it's called I Want to Go to Law School? Seriously, that's the title of it, with a question mark. Right? And it's basically tips for undergraduates who think they want to go to law school. I wrote it a little more than 10 years ago. Some things have changed, but not very much. So for example, it was written before the GRE became an alternative to the LSAT. It talks mainly about like the LSAT, but it's advice that is not the kind of advice that they would typically get. So, I mean, one of the first things, so I've already had, for example, this semester, several conversations with students in the class who came in thinking, with the assumption, I think I want to go to law school, right? And then as they listen to the speakers and, and I do my own lecturing or whatever, they start to question that a little bit. And those are fantastic conversations. So I think for students who, think they want to go, I think, look, it's proof that it's a fantastic profession to pursue, right? I never want to dissuade people from going. What I do want to dissuade people from is going with their eyes closed, right? You can't sleepwalk and do this, right? Or you're going to not be happy, right? You might not be happy even if you have your eyes open. But my point is that you have to pursue this kind of thing with your eyes open. And so how do you do that? One of the things that I say to law students before you go to law school, somebody, I think you were saying earlier, it's really good advice to, take a year or two on before you go to law school. And I don't call it a year off. I call it a year on, right? I think this is in my little book too. It's like, this is not a year off from life. This is a year on to learn about life. It'll make you a better lawyer. It'll make you a better law student if you do that. Because what is lawyering about? Lawyering is about helping people solve problems, right? And it helps when you experience those problems yourself in life, right? We were talking about how Washington semester helps people experience life. Whoever invented Washington semester is a freaking genius, right? Serious. Because it really does help students experience life. So go experience more of it, then go to law school. And you may decide in those 2 or 3 years on that law school is not for you, right? So that's one thing I advise. The other thing is, and this was the same thing my dad told me, I thought I wanted to go to law school because I thought I wanted to go to law school after I saw a really terrible movie in the 1980s called And Justice for All. It's a terrible movie. It's with Al Pacino. I highly recommend it. It's got John Forsythe and a phenomenal cast. Christine Lahti, terrible movie. Lee Strasberg, amazing cast. And I was like, oh yeah, I want to go be a champion for justice like Al Pacino, right? And my dad said, no. Why don't you go talk to my lawyer? right? So that was the first thing I did, was just talk to the family lawyer, because we happen to have, my dad was a doctor and had his own business. And then he was like, then you should probably just go get some experience working at a law firm if you can, like as a legal assistant or an intern or something. And that's what I did. And that is really valuable experience to get before you go to law school. So to the degree people are interning here in Washington semester with law firms, and some of them do, or with the American Bar Association, where it's not a law firm, but they're getting a lot of interactions with lawyers, they're starting to get a sense of that. So that's what I would recommend. So, and they don't have to buy them. What else? Other questions about the course or anything else? I'm available anytime, Sherman@american.edu. Thank you so much.
I'm gonna sit here. We're moving me to go quickly. Carol puts me at the end because she knows I'll make it quick. A couple of things that. So I teach the internship class, I teach a seminar, which I'm going to talk about in a second. I also teach the research class. And there hasn't been much talk about the research class, and if people are interested in knowing more about it, I'd be happy to spend some time talking about it. I think it's an amazing part of the Washington semester program. Students who want to do a senior thesis, a capstone, to be able to be in DC, to interview people, to work with someone like me or Jeff Crouch, and in methodology and going to the National Archives and all that. But it's tough. It's 30 to 50 page paper, in addition to all the other stuff. If the homeschool requires it, it's great. Otherwise, it's really a heavy. But I'm happy, if there's questions about that, I'm happy to talk about it. So the class that I teach is globalization and crisis. And I've been in Washington semester full time for 22 years. Most of the time I've taught international business. And then the program wanted more of an interdisciplinary seminar. It's primarily political economy. So for those of you who don't have faculty who teach international political economy, it's a great class for students to take. But health and sustainability are all also parts of this class. Each week basically is a crisis. Democracy versus authoritarianism, the infodemic, misinformation and disinformation, great power conflict, the rise of China, nuclear weapons, climate change, sustainable development, the financial crisis, trade and supply chains, of course, COVID, and probably next semester I'm going to have to get rid of one of those and add AI. So every semester, because of the wonderful world we live in, there's always something new, but the class is always updated. And the internships are very, very important, but so are the seminars. And in the seminars, we give, serious mix of peer review readings, and policy pieces that prep our students in the seminar to the guest speaker. And the experiential and active learning is that with that foundation, with that seminar type discussion, they are really ready to go when we're doing the financial crisis. They're sitting in the boardroom of the Federal Reserve where interest rates are decided. They're talking to a senior staff member of the Federal Reserve, and they have a sense of what is really going on in the world, and they're able to ask questions to those people. And I hope that they'll remember what I have to say. I hope they'll remember the readings that I asked them to read, but I know they're going to remember being in that room, talking to that Fed staffer. And that is just something that, he can't do anywhere else. And the Washington semester, I have, this semester, all of Thursday. So I have the flexibility to have them for a chunk of time where we can do things like, when you do sustainable development, as we were this semester, we're at the World Bank. We're doing international debt. Next week, we're going to be at the international the IMF. Just yesterday, we wanted to get the perspective of a multinational corporation, a speaker that I've had for 2 decades, and as her career has evolved, she is one of the top senior executives at UPS. And she was able to give insights on unions and labor, as was our speaker, a senior person at the AFL-CIO. And we went to their offices. I can't say enough about, I'm a true believer. I've been doing this is my career. I really believe, Washington semester has been around for more than 75 years, but this type of active and experiential learning really does make a difference. I love doing it as a professor, but I see it really special with my students. But I also have the data to prove it. So in addition to the forgotten educator research that Professor Lowenthal and I did, we also did our first article that we did together. And just a side note, we went to preschool together. The first article, peer-reviewed article that we did together was called Making the Grade. And it was basically showing how a semester, an experiential and active learning semester like the Washington semester program, students who go through that versus students who don't go through that, when they go back to their home schools, their GPA is higher versus not participating in an active experiential learning. So why is that? And just really quickly, because we got to get to the speaker, stronger critical thinking and verbal ability. When they're with the speakers, they're really thinking about connecting that theory and practice. Student maturity, the relevance that now they have a much better idea of the relevance that it has. Their last year or their last year and a half of liberal arts education, what it really means going, from college to career. They're better writers because they understand in our classes, in the internship, how important communication skills really are. And then service learning, just a better, because they've experienced a better understanding of the common good, of civic engagement, of justice, of being actors of change. So should I introduce the speaker?
Well, take questions.
Okay. Cheryl always makes me rush through my stuff. So I'm kidding. She appreciates that I. Any questions? Okay, it's been a long day.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. So the last thing the last thing that wasn't mentioned or didn't get the emphasis that I really want you guys to take away because it sort of gets buried is the role that international students play in the Washington semester program. And in teaching international business and teaching globalization and crisis, I do get a good share of international students. And they really are a gift to the program and to the teachers and your students. I've had students, domestic students, American students say to me that I learned more about Germany, France, Norway, South Korea, Zimbabwe, and those are all represented in the 19 students that I have in my globalization and crisis class, than when I went to Denmark or when I went to Paris, because I was just in dorms with other, American students. And when you're learning about what's the effect of climate change, and you can look at somebody who's from Zimbabwe or from Norway and ask questions, and them learning from each other in a way that you just couldn't if it was just American students. It's just an amazing part. And to Amy's credit, Dave Brown's credit, Jeff's credit, bringing in these students, having these students part of this program has really made it, that much more of a special program of students learning from students. And our speaker right now is an example of that. And I'll get back to that in a second. But looking at the quick bio that I'm going to read in a second, yesterday was the 85th anniversary of Kristallnacht, which was the day of broken glass when really the Nazi terror went through the Jewish communities of Germany, breaking the windows of synagogues and shops and burning them down, and really being not the beginning, but well, what we'll consider one of the important parts is turning points in the genocide of the Holocaust. It also is the anniversary of something that she's going to speak about, which is the kinder transport, the moving of children out of Europe to safer areas. But given the terrible headlines of growing anti-Semitism in the United States, around the world, and the challenge as educators on campuses, I think the talk that we're about to hear in a second is even that much more relevant. So Lilly Maier was born in Munich, Germany in 1992 as the daughter of Austrian journalist. She holds an MA in Jewish history from the Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich, and has a second MA in magazine journalism from NYU, New York University, where she studied as a Fulbright scholar. Since 2012, she was working as a museum guide for the Dachau concentration camp memorial site. In the book that we're going to hear about that she just published, Arthur and Lily, it was originally published in 2018 in German. Since then, Maier has written a biography of Austrian educator Ernest Popnik, who rescued hundreds of children during World War II. One of them was Arthur Kern. She currently finished her PhD thesis about Jewish women who rescued Jews during the Holocaust. For over 10 years, she worked as a journalist for several American, German, and Austrian publications, including the Jewish Forward, the Columbus Dispatch, and PolitiFact. Lilly Maier fell in love with the US politics watching Aaron Sorkin's West Wing, as many of our students do. So she came to study journalism at the Washington Semester Program in 2013. And she is just another example of the amazing international students that really played just an important part in this great program. So, Lilly.
Do I percent? No, here, would you like to be 5%? This is all of my program. Is on? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Well, very happy to be here today. I was just at a Jewish history class over at the campus. And then accidentally we found out that this is happening today. And so I'm very happy to also be able to speak to you about my time at the Washington Semester Program and my book. So I did the semester program in journalism in 2013, which is surprisingly really 10 years ago. Because this week, so I'm on my book tour. It just came out in English 2 weeks ago. And in an article, someone wrote, Lilly Maier has been a journalist in DC a decade ago. Okay, I was an intern, but it sounds cooler. And so I did start studying history in Germany with the aim of becoming a journalist. So this, because you cannot study journalism in Germany. So then this Washington Semester Program really was the perfect exchange program. And as you can see, one could get much closer to the White House. And so I did that in the fall of 2013. Germans only ever can do it in the fall. So if you want your students to interact with Germans, you have to tell them to do the Washington Semester Program in the fall. And then years later, I would come back and do, as we said, a master's degree at NYU. And now I'm getting a PhD in Jewish history. So I kind of am not really a journalist anymore, but I learned a lot during the time I was. I think there's one more photo of my, yes, Washington Semester Program. We did go to the Washington Post. It really was one of the highlights of my students' experience. We had like 50 guest speakers or places we visited, and the government shut down, which at the time was exciting, I guess. And I really don't know when we then had time to do so much writing, because we did 2 days of internship and we had all these excursions, but we did a lot of writing. Like I wrote a story about the Watergate garage. And I wrote a personal essay, which is the first chapter of the book.
So it ended up like 10 years ago in class here, I wrote a personal essay that became the prologue for my book. We did a lot of writing. I really don't know how we ended up doing that. But it never felt stressed because we were enjoying it so much. And so now that when I had started planning this book tour, I thought I was going to mostly be speaking about the fact that yesterday, 85 years ago, was Kristallnacht. But also that led to the 85th anniversary of a rescue operation called the Kindertransport. Then, of course, a war started 4 weeks ago, and everything kind of like changed, brought it much closer to home. I'm on a 10-week book tour, and like 80% of my readings are in Jewish places. So it has been different, I think, than anyone expected. At the same time, more important than ever, of course, to teach about the Holocaust and against anti-Semitism. I understand that people, especially Jewish people, don't want to hear about the Holocaust right now because they're already depressed. My book is incredibly hopeful, and I hope even in like the 15 minutes I'm going to talk to you about it, you will see that. But of course, no one knows that before they come and hear me speak about it. So people really don't want to hear about the Holocaust right now. Okay, so the book is called Arthur and Lilly. So who is Arthur? How did I even get to meet Arthur? So we both grew up in the same apartment. In this house in Vienna in Austria, on the first floor in an apartment, Arthur, a Holocaust survivor, spent his childhood in the 1930s. And then 60 years later, in the same apartment, I spent my childhood in the 1990s. And we met when I was 11. So that was 20 years ago. We met because he wanted to see his old apartment again. So he was the only survivor of his immediate family. And so that meant that the apartment really was like the last connection he had to his family. And so it was very important for him to come and visit this apartment. It was like a trip down memory lane to a happy childhood when he still had another name as well. His name was Oswald at the time, Oswald Kernberg, and he only became an Arthur in America. So if I'm going to say Oswald in the next couple minutes, I mean the child. And if I say Arthur, I mean the lovely man who's here. And I also wrote the book this way, so I jump around in time in the book. It is very journalistic in its writing. It is very historical in its research, but I do jump around. I talk, of course, mainly about his history and his rescue, but I talk about time we spent together, how I did research for the book, how I found out things. I also traveled to all the places that he was during his escape as a child, so I also talk about that. And so I kind of like jump in between. And to maybe start to give you a little bit of background, the next photo shows his mother, Frida, Oswald's mother. Everyone remembers her to be a terrible cook, which I find kind of mean. I mean, that's the only thing people remember you for. She was actually a successful businesswoman. Together with her husband, she ran a family factory, but really that's what people remember her for. And the next photo shows her husband, Herman. He was like a good-natured jokester. He is remembered for always having candy in his pockets. And he did pray every morning. So he did the Orthodox Jewish prayer every morning. But then he did work on Shabbat, which should be the day of rest. So like semi-religious, I would say. Quite common for middle-class Jewish families of the time. And I think there's one more photo of the family time. So Oswald, of course, the main character of the book, really was not a good boy. And he would be the first to admit that. I mean, Arthur told so many stories, quite proud of the jokes he had, pranks he did. My favorite one is that one time he was petting a horse, a carriage horse, carefully plucked the hair from the horse's tail, went home at maybe like 8 or 9 years old, very carefully made a hole into an egg, slit the hair inside the egg, and he found it hilarious when his mother opened the egg to cook and freaked out. To give you a kind of an example of what kind of boy he was. And the mother, as I said, was running the family factory with the husband. So the family had lived in nannies to take care of Oswald and his brother Fritz. What Oswald or Arthur would remember all his life is that one day the nanny didn't come anymore. And that's because in March of 1938, Austria was annexed to Nazi Germany. We say the annexation and not the occupation because not a single shot was fired. And the Austrians were quite cheerful when the Nazis came. The big difference is that 5 years before, when the Nazis came to power in Germany, meant that there were 5 years of more and more anti-Jewish laws, and people kind of got used to them. But in Austria, it happened overnight. So all the laws came into power overnight. One of the laws is that a Christian woman cannot work for a Jewish family. That's why the nanny didn't show up for work. And even though the shock for many Jews was much higher, stronger in Germany, in Austria, because it happened overnight, Oswald's family was very optimistic, especially the father, and he didn't even try to leave for a very long time. And even after yesterday, 85 years ago, the father managed to avoid arrest. An uncle was arrested and sent to concentration camp. Even then, no one really talked about leaving. Only when the uncle came home from concentration camp in February 39, then they wanted to leave Austria now. And February 39 is quite late to try to leave. So it's basically impossible to get visa for a family. They now try to at least save the boys. And so they sign up Oswald and Fritz for Kindertransport. I don't know how much you know about the Kindertransport. It's becoming a bit more known in the last years, I would say. I'm sure it's becoming much more known in January when an Anthony Hopkins movie comes out that is supposed to win him an Oscar. And is what they say, and it's about the Kindertransport. The Kindertransport means the rescue of 15,000 children that could be saved because their parents were willing to separate from the children and to send the child away by themselves. And Kindertransport or children's transport, most known is the one to England, the British Kindertransport, which is 10,000 children alone. But there were also one to other countries, and you might see this document is in French. So Oswald and Fritz were signed up to the Kindertransport to France. And this was the same procedure. It was children between 2 and 16 years old. And they quite carefully selected the children. They only wanted healthy children, which of course, from today's perspective, is terrible to think about. They did it with the best intentions. The Jewish social workers selecting the children were afraid that if like a child in London or in Paris is going to become a problem, that the governments might not allow more children to come in. So they selected quite strictly. In retrospect, they could have saved much more children because World War II came so quickly, the Kindertransport didn't really go on for long. And now the Campbell family, this had a very tragic consequence that both brothers were signed up for the Kindertransport, but only Oswald was chosen. And his brother Fritz suffered from a form of epilepsy and had a learning disorder because of that. And so 13-year-old Fritz and 10-year-old Oswald went to the same school, to the same grade in school. And so only Oswald was chosen, and Fritz stayed behind with his parents. And then in France, so Oswald went to France with 50 other children together on a train. And then in France, the children were meant to be housed in refugee children homes. And the British Kindertransport, they came to foster families. The French, from the very beginning, thought educationally and emotionally, it's going to be easier for the children to be among peers, less isolating. But they were not really ready when the children arrived. So they were sent to this home, and they were sent to this home. It was a very confusing time until finally it all settled down because they moved to this beautiful house. And that was the freshly renovated refugee children's home. And it was run by an organization called OSE, a Jewish organization that started these refugee children homes. And they were run by German and Austrian exiled teachers. So they were teaching in German. You think I have another photo of that? Yes. So here you see Ernst Papanek, the director. He was a political enemy of the Nazis. And really within short weeks, basically, installed an incredibly progressive educational system. And that really today you would still call very modern. And I could talk about that for like 2 hours, so I was not going to. Let me just tell you, this is a photo. It's a surprise birthday party that the children organized for Papa. It was in August 39, so it was like the last happy moment they had before World War II broke out. I don't remember the next photo. Yes, okay, before World War II broke out. So here you can see the children during an air raid, basically having to go down. That, of course, being the second big difference to the British transport is that majority of France was occupied by Germany. So first you had to evacuate the children to the south of France, where they opened another children's home. And at the beginning, people thought, okay, they're now in the unoccupied part, they will be safe there. Oswald here, let me show you. This boy, this boy is biting into the arm. I know a lot of people from this photo, not only Oswald, who became Arthur, and all of them always talked about the strong feeling of community and unity that developed hiding in the south of France in this children's home. And they started calling themselves brothers and sisters. And they do till today, 80, 90 years old, they consider themselves like family. But of course, Oswald still had a family, and that is the brother and the two parents. And they have not managed to leave Vienna. They were stuck there. They were among the last Jews left in Vienna. And so then they were deported to Poland. And really their only hope, their only solace was knowing little Oswald is safe in the south of France. Everyone thought he was safe in the south of France. But of course, if you know history, that's not true. The south of France, often called Vichy France, from the very beginning collaborated with Nazi Germany, and it was actually French police that then went around arresting Jews. And so they had to organize a second Kindertransport to get the children out of France, this time to America. That part is really incredibly unknown. So I have been to Kindertransport conferences where professional people spending their careers on a Kindertransport had never heard of a Kindertransport to America. It is through Portugal, through Spain to Portugal, over the ocean to America. Like a dozen NGOs involved in this, everyone hating on each other. I read so many documents, they were so jealous of each other. Makes you wonder how they managed to save a single child. But they did, in the middle of the war, save 300 children. And here you can see them boarding the ship in Lisbon. And the next photo shows a very boring port in Staten Island, where they arrived in September 1941. And what happens now in America is that they separate the children. So American social workers were totally against homes and thought a child belongs in a family. And against big protests from Papanek, split up the children and sent them all over America to foster families, and didn't give the children each other's contact information, because they really wanted them to become American as quickly as possible. And this, for the children, that was the huge shock, because they had managed every other trauma before, and their separation from their parents, by finding this community in the homes. And now that was taken away. And Oswald, he stayed in New York. He came for foster family in the Bronx. And I'm going to read one short part of the book now. That is quite sad, admittedly. But after that, it's going to get better for him. And it's about his bar mitzvah. So like the most important religious ceremony in the life of a Jewish boy. And during my book tour, I have now read it 3 times in a synagogue, which was very special for everyone. But I like reading it everywhere, so I will read you the part. It was November 1st, 1941, 2 weeks after Oswald 13's birthday and the day of his bar mitzvah. In Judaism, the bar mitzvah represents the religious maturity of a young man. He becomes a full member of the community and must now comply with all religious laws. As part of the ceremony, the boy recites the Torah portion of the day in Hebrew. Oswald's bar mitzvah was on Shabbat Lech Lecha, the Shabbat on which Lech Lecha Torah section from the first book of Moses is read. Whether it was coincidence or fate, Oswald recited his own story in front of the assembled community. And the Lord said to Abram, "Go forth from your land and from your birthplace and from your father's house to the land that I will show you." But for the young boy, this was not what he remembered best about the day. "Nobody came to my bar mitzvah," Arthur told me. "A bar mitzvah should be a joyous occasion, but for me, it was one of the saddest days of my life." Frida and Hermann Kernberg were barred from attending their son's day of honor, but in their minds, they were with him. On October 19th, Oswald's actual birthday, they sent him an emotional letter from Poland, which reached New York at the end of December. "My dearest loved one, today on your birthday, as well as your day of bar mitzvah, we all, that is, dearest mother, your brother Fritz and I, are sitting in a very tiny room and are constantly thinking and talking about you." Hermann Kernberg wrote from a ghetto in Poland. "In my thoughts, I lift my hands over your head and bless you with the blessing from the Bible. May God bless, shelter, and protect you, and always hold his right hand over you. Amen." Was the last time Oswald ever heard from his son. And so this really was the low point of his life for him. And he's now in a foster family in the Bronx. He was very gifted, especially in the sciences and math. So you can see he went to Stuyvesant High School. I actually spoke at Stuyvesant 2 weeks ago. They have a Jewish history class. Around this time, he starts calling himself Arthur. Mainly because Oswald is not that common of a name, but more importantly, there was one thing that is called Oswald. I don't know if you've ever heard of Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. No. Okay. So Oswald the Lucky Rabbit is the first cartoon that Walt Disney ever did. It looks exactly like Mickey Mouse, but has longer ears. And then because of a copyright issue, Walt Disney had to stop doing Oswald, cut off his ears, and created Mickey Mouse. And so it was in the 40s, it was the first cartoon. And you can imagine kids, I mean, in school, constantly like, "Oh, well, the Lucky Rabbit." So he really did not like the name. So he just starts calling himself Arthur. That's a boy he liked, was named Arthur. He just chose that name. You cannot legally change your name until you become an adult, which is why on his high school diploma, he's still Oswald. But then he graduates in 47, and 3 years later at City College, New York, meets Trudy. And they're sitting next to each other in class, or during an exam actually, and he copies her. And she says, "Maybe, we should practice and study together instead of you copying me." My entire book, I often say I could have called it 1001 coincidences, because it's full of coincidences, even like how Arthur and I met by living in the same apartment. Nothing is crazier than these two people meeting, because they didn't know that 10 years before they had basically been neighbors in Vienna. And they had literally lived like 4 minutes from each other, but went to different elementary schools and had never met. So now meet sitting in an exam next to each other in New York. Got married in 51. I think the next photo shows, oh yeah. So then 52, they both graduate. Trudy, as both were engineers. So Trudy, early 50s, quite impressive as a woman. Moved to California, because that's where the industry is. And you can see Arthur became a rocket scientist, and so he was involved in the moon landing. And there's an astronaut sitting in the photo next to Arthur. And that now really was like a Cliff Note version of Arthur's life. But let me quickly tell you, why is this book called Arthur and Lilly? Why is it not just called Arthur? So let me quickly tell you a bit how my life was influenced by meeting Arthur. So I studied history, and I've done like a decade worth of research on the Kindertransport. As I said, got my getting right now my PhD in Jewish history. Basically because as an 11-year-old girl, I met a Holocaust survivor who came to our house one time. And maybe because of a second thing, and that is that my mother signed me up for a student history project. So we had known a couple months in advance that Arthur wanted to see the apartment. And my mother said, of course, he's happy to. But we didn't know him. I mean, he could have had like a nervous breakdown when he came. And so my mother wanted to prepare for it. And also my mother felt, now we're living in an apartment knowing that everyone was killed, except like the one person who survived. I was 11, I didn't think so much about that, but my mother wanted there to be more than just, he comes, we have cake, he leaves again, and then we're left in this apartment. So she signed me up for a project that had Austrian high school students research the biographies of Holocaust victims. And so I wrote a short biography about Frida, Arthur's mother. And so he would answer some questions via email even before he came. And then when he came, he brought these photos, some photos that he had from his family to tell me about it. Then, of course, my mother would never have needed to worry because he really was the happiest man both of us ever met. But I was already in the history project. And then the history project liked to use me for publicity a lot because it's a cute story, you know, 11-year-old girl living in the apartment. So you see this article and I am holding a photo of Frida, of Arthur's mother. And so the next day, a woman starts calling the newspaper, demanding to speak to my family. And then of course, the newspaper doesn't just hand out contact information, but she keeps calling. And in the end, they call my mother and say, please, I mean, this crazy lady, no one is getting any work done. Can you please just talk to her? So my mother calls this woman, and it turns out, of course, she was not crazy. She was 83 years old, and her name was Valerie Bartosz. And for over 60 years, she had kept the package from Arthur's parents. And she recognized the photo in the newspaper. So in 1941, when the parents were being deported to Poland, Hermann Kernberg packed a package with like passports and insurance documents and business documents. And he was always the optimist. So he thought, if we come back from Poland with this package, we can start our lives again. And if not, little Oswald and friends should get it. Gives the package to his best friend. But the best friend is half Jewish and is also afraid of being arrested. Gives the package to his 18-year-old cousin. 80-year-old cousin, now 60 years later, recognizes Frida's photo in the newspaper. And that was like the short version of the story. Like, usually she read tabloids, but on that day she read a serious newspaper. The amount of things that had to fall into place for this woman after Arthur meeting me, seeing this photo about it is quite extraordinary. And so, as you can imagine, our friendship became much more important than if really one time this man had come and saw the apartment and left again. And so for Arthur, basically this friendship was like a new connection to Austria, to his home. I basically got like a huge Jewish American family. Very soon, Arthur and his wife Trudy started introducing me as their Austrian granddaughter. And the other granddaughters gladly did not have a problem with that. And so really incredibly influential relationship developed out of that. And I became a Holocaust historian. So really this one meeting had quite the influence on me. And before I finish, and they're actually selling the book outside if you're interested. Before I finish and before we have, I think, time for some questions, I would like to read you actually the first paragraph of the book, which I wrote here at American University, and which just leads itself nicely to finish. I'm writing this book almost 15 years after my first meeting with Trudy and Arthur Kern. Every so often, I like to think back to that warm day in March with birds singing outside, the buds on the trees, the first harbingers of spring. At the time, none of us realized how deeply this meeting would affect all of our lives, or how a single apartment in Vienna would unite our families forever. Years later, Arthur called our first meeting one of the highlights of his life. Referring to the famous nostalgic expression, he said, "Sometimes you can't go home again," but he added, "I did, and it was magnificent." Thank you. This 1 minute. All the ways you can stalk me on the internet or in person. As I said, I'm on a 10-week book tour, so I might be, I don't know where you're all from, but I might be coming close to you. It's all like just Google my name or go to my website and you find all the links there. Do we have time for questions? Yes, sure, we have time for a couple of questions. I don't know if you have any, but happy to answer.
Wow.
Yeah. You got like the short version. I can speak about this forever. Yeah.
Are you going to Texas on your tour?
I am going to the middle of nowhere, Texas, in Lufkin, which is like 2 hours from Houston.
Okay, coming to
Education. Yes, I tried really getting more. The reason I'm going to Lufkin is because an adorable 10-year-old had to do a school report about a Holocaust survivor, and coincidentally chose Arthur's name. And his father found me on Twitter, and so Arthur's family and I got to watch the boys' presentation about Arthur. It was adorable because he was so cute. He was like, "Arthur and Miss Lilly are both from Australia." I said it again. I said Australia. And so I'm going to his school, which really is in the middle of nowhere, Texas. And then I tried finding other places, but couldn't get any, so I'm just going to be there. Yeah.
What was Arthur's reaction when you told him he wanted to write a book?
So Arthur died in 2015, but he did know that I was writing a book, because I interviewed him extensively for it, and he was very excited about it. Never got to read it, so I did find out things that he hadn't known, so that was quite sad that I couldn't share that. Really, literally on his deathbed, he made me promise to translate it to English because none of his family reads German. So it took me only 5 years to fulfill this promise, and now they can all find out what they're going to about him, basically. Yeah.
What has been his family's reaction?
Very positive. I mean, they really like my family. I spend more time with them than with relatives. They also more fun with my family. So yeah, it's very positive.
Who's gonna play Arthur in the movie?
Right. It is, I also believe it should be a movie. It's been what everyone has been saying in the last 2 weeks. And I went to a lot of synagogues and they're like, yeah, you should like tell Spielberg about this. Like, sure, like how do you you have no idea how many people know his sister? So many people were like, well, I know his sister. And so I don't know. Yeah, we don't know. Apparently 4 people are telling his sister. I don't know. We will find out if they will actually will tell. Yeah, we don't know. But it is, yeah, quite a movie. I know. I agree. So if you also know Spielberg's sister. Yeah.
You can continue to ask questions of Lily. I think she has a little time as we wrap this up. We're so grateful. To me, this is such a poignant end to a meaningful interinstitutional. We're so grateful to Lily. We're grateful to you. This, to me, again, this shows the connectedness of our stories all together with our alum coming back full circle. And also in the shadow of World War II, back in 1947, a group of member schools gathered together on this campus and convened to create the Washington Semester Program. So it was in this era of great turmoil and change that university professors and administrators recognized the need to create change agents in the world. It's so poignant to hear the story from Lily today, who's going forward in the world. We know that you'll continue to send us students who are making change and will go forth. This has been such a meaningful day and a half. My hats off to the incredible Carol Austin. She's created this magnificent experience. So thank you all for coming. We have a little book signing. I know I want to be in line to get my copy signed. And we look forward to lingering with you. We do have a campus tour and Carol wants to perhaps give a note on that.
Yeah, we'll try to leave here in about 15